Hey you, and welcome back to Let's Play Kerbal Space Program. This is episode 22. My name is Satchmo. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today we're going to do something a little bit different on this nice Monday morning. We're going to be watching and talking about some of my design philosophy regarding the upcoming missions, which are going to be to build a base on the surface of Duna, and likewise a ferry to travel back and forth between the base and the space station, refueling both of those elements there. So we're starting off with now, what you're looking at on screen is the rover that I decided to work on. The body of the rover is constructed of these Rockomax tanks, and I chose the biggest, most durable wheels that I could find. I briefly considered they're the smaller wheels, but then they were comically small. You can see I started off with 4 pairs of wheels, but they were not big enough. However, I do want kind of as many wheels as I can on here for maximum stability and for impact tolerance if it ever comes to that. And what you're seeing now is, of course, I want to have solar panels on there. This is just kind of the preliminary design, and I'm stress testing it. I'm seeing how fast it goes, seeing what the turning radius is, seeing how easy it is to flip out. Just going back and forth from the vehicle editor out into the real world and seeing exactly what this thing is capable of. You definitely want to try to do this on Kerbal whenever you can just reset it and go back to the VAB and it's free and nobody dies, as opposed to actually doing it out there in the wild. So what I'm doing here is I'm changing the traction control and testing out the brakes and just kind of getting a feel for exactly how this thing drives. Now, something to pay attention to here. This will be more important here momentarily, you'll see why. But the wheels, these particular wheels, don't actually have turning capabilities. They do not turn. So the way that they steer is through differential. They have differential steering. So they'll do kind of like a tractor will, or not a tractor, like just heavy duty equipment, like an excavator or a bulldozer, or a tank, I guess I should have said. Where one set of wheels will go forward and the other one will go backwards, and that's how they turn. Or even if it's not going backwards, it's going at a different rate, so that way it induces some kind of turning. Which works just fine, but it doesn't have the best turning radius, and also you have to be moving forward at a pretty good clip to actually be turning. So you can see what I did there was I added another set of wheels to the front, and here I am adding them to the back too, just to see how that works. And then there we go. I get a lot better turning radius if I just use these wheels in the front to actually do most of the steering, and then do the wheels on the side for stability and for the actual locomotion itself. Again, every time I'm kind of testing to see how easily this thing flips over. Now, I considered doing something like I've done this kind of thing before, where you put landing gears on the other side of the craft, or on the wheels, or on the tops of the wheels. And what happens if you ever find yourself in a position where the thing can flip over, you can extend these landing gears and kind of flip yourself back onto your wheels. I did not do that here. I feel like if I'm careful driving, that won't be an issue. Here I'm testing to see if I can detach these wheels, because I was talking during it, but if you impact these wheels, of course they're not as strong as the big ones are, they will break, and if they break, it becomes significantly more difficult to actually steer the craft. So I wanted this thing to have the ability to actually jettison these wheels, should it ever come to that, and both the front pair and the back pair jettison separately. So if something ever happens and those wheels break, I will be able to just deploy them and drive away without them. They won't be holding me back. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but just in case. To that end, I'm going to be putting a docking port there in the front, and I realized that the docking port might have been a little close to those wheels, so I added I took the back battery packs off and put them on the front instead to kind of extend that nose out a little bit. And here I'm testing it with fuel and without fuel. Again, of course, the gravity difference is different on Kerbal than it is on Duna, so this isn't an exact facsimile, but it is pretty close to what I'll be experiencing in Duna. I think right there what happened is, and I think I might have edited this part out of the video, but what's happening is that if you turn, with the way I have the steering, if you turn, you actually speed up. Because of that differential steering, you actually gain velocity by turning. So it's not like I can just go forward and coast and then turn like you could in a car if you just took your foot off the gas. The act of actually turning in this vehicle increases your speed. And that's no good, because when you're coming close to docking, which is what I'm about to do here in a second, you really want to be in full control of your speed, and you don't want things like turning adjustments to increase or decrease your velocity. So I solved that by isolating the front wheels and back wheels to the steering entirely, and disabling the differential steering on the other wheels. Now, of course, it's there as an option should I ever need it, but in normal operation, I will disable those, so the side wheels will only go forward and backwards, and the front and back will do all the steering. Now here what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that I have these things lined up, because I've done it, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this, where you put something on the two planets and the docking ports do not line up. So here I just tested it over and over and over again. I edited it out, but I just kind of kept adjusting the height of those docking ports to make sure that it matched. And here I am, I docked with it 3 times just to really make sure that I could dock with this thing reliably. Now, the surface on Duna, of course, is not flat. Hardly anywhere is it very flat. So I will have to be careful to try to find the flattest area I can to actually dock with. But it looks like, provided these things are at the same altitude, same terrain elevation, I should say, they will be able to dock with one another. So now that I'm happy with my rover, I move over and I start building the rest of the space station, trying to be careful to keep those docking ports exactly where they were, since that's going to be since it's key. I spent all that time making sure it works. But they only really need to be at the same height with relation to those landing gears, so everything else doesn't really matter. So what I have here is I have several more tanks of storage, from fuel storage. You see I have plenty of solar panels. I think I wind up getting rid of those momentarily, but I also have a lot of parachutes, because we are going to be trying to land this thing in the atmosphere, and it's important that this thing kind of lands upright. Likewise, I am going to make just all the landing gear that I can, just to really make sure that everything goes smoothly in terms of the landing. The more landing gear you have, the higher your impact tolerance is. So, also decided to put a command module on there. Even though I'm planning for this thing to be entirely remote controlled, I want the option to put a person on here. So that's why I put a command pod there. Also, that's going to help give us a little bit of reaction, because the command pods come with reaction wheels and RCS as well. So should I need it, I will have a little bit of reaction and RCS. Now what I've done is I've taken this same lander. I'm going to make this thing kind of in an H configuration, and I've flipped around the docking port so that the docking ports match up. I've taken the convertitron, which is that first element there, and put on a bunch of ore containers. And then here I am testing to make sure that I have I want 2 drills, one on either side, just for symmetry's sake and balance sake. And of course I'm making sure that they actually are pointing down. In fact, I saw on Reddit the other day that somebody was very proud of themselves for landing a base on the moon, only to find out that the drills were upside down, and you can't drill ore from the air. So that didn't work so well for them. Now here I'm running into a problem that's pretty common whenever you're doing this kind of thing in Kerbal, which is you're trying to put several pieces on in a way that the game doesn't really expect you to, so sometimes you have a hard time actually mating these pieces together. The real idea here being that whenever you click on a piece, it has certain nodes that it wants to attach to, those little green and black balls. However, those aren't radially on these tanks, those don't exist, so you have to put them there some way. However, if you put the docking port, if you mate the 2 docking ports like I did, then that manages to kind of attach radially to the tank. So I kind of found a workaround. I think another way to have done this would be to take there's like a structural docking port part that I've used before, and that works very similarly. I'm not too worried about symmetry per se, but it is important that these things are, fully equipped with everything they need. So I put plenty of RCS, you saw me there, just put plenty of battery and plenty of parachutes as well to make sure this thing lands kind of in the configuration that it is in. On the right side I have all of the docking ports, should I ever need them, and on the left side I have the radiators, because you will need radiators. The drills generate a lot of heat, and you can overheat the process if you don't have radiators dissipating the heat out into space. Likewise, you see there I have some reaction wheel in there, because that module there is not going to have a command pod. It is just going to have the remote controlled guidance unit, so I do need reaction wheels there. And here I'm just disassembling it and trying to reassemble it reassemble it in line so I can actually launch it into space. A kind of key design element here is that I have the two decouplers facing each other, so that way the decoupler will completely detach from both parts, not just one, as is normally the case. And here I have kind of a big problem where I can't, there's nowhere for me to actually attach that bottom piece to the middle piece. And likewise, you can see there I had to Google a problem where the mouse wasn't actually clicking on the craft. And turns out that's actually a pretty common problem. The way people solve it is just by exiting the VAB and getting back in. So a couple times during this, I had a hard time actually selecting the piece, and it was just a glitch in the game. You see there, I kicked out and kicked back in, and then now for some reason I'm able to actually select these parts. So I really don't know why that glitch happens. That is like the third or fourth glitch in this YouTube series. The game's fantastic, but it is not without its faults. So here I am trying to make a sub-assembly of just that leftmost part, so that way hopefully I can attach it kind of as one unit to this bottom unit. I think that's how, there it is. That's how I wound up actually getting it to attach. It's by creating its own piece and giving it the core and actually rooting to that part, so that way the game recognizes it as being kind of its own entity. So there we go, I have the three elements stacked one on top of each other, and now all I do is I strut it up. Just for stability's sake, because all those places where the two things connect are of course structural weaknesses, and I enshroud the entire thing in a nice big fairing. So to the bottom of that, and I actually have to go back to R&D here and pick up the pieces that I want, we're going to start using the Rhino, which is kind of the most powerful, or one of the most powerful engines in the game. It has a huge thrust, especially in atmosphere, and also uses these bigger tanks too. So yeah, the upper stage there I put the Poodle on, which I love, but I think the bottom stage I'm actually going to be using the Rhino for the first time. So here we go, I lift that up, take my transfer stage, and decouple it, put a decoupler on, put a, what do you call that, little step up, and two tanks, because you have plenty of thrust with that Rhino. And just for insurance, I go ahead and attach two more to the side as well. Of course, putting on aerodynamic tops, and feeding the fuel into the center as is normal. So you can see I've pretty much exclusively used this kind of 3-core configuration in all of my designs. They fly well, they work well, it's dependable. People do crazy stuff in this game, but really there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. This thing works just fine. And finally, here is our nice little pan shot of the Duna Bass, all ready to go and on the launch pad. So kind of a short episode today, just talking about a little bit of the design philosophy. Hopefully some of that helped kind of see some of the process, even if it was sped up. Kind of help understand exactly kind of what I was thinking as I was doing it. If there's any questions about that, of course, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. But I didn't want to just do that off camera, and it took way too long to actually do live. I thought it took way too long just to do that and film the entire thing and talk through the process, and I made too many mistakes, and just that part of the process can be very long. That's something more suited towards a stream, and if I get into streaming, I will do that. I wouldn't mind spending 3 hours having a beer and designing stuff and engaging with people. However, in a YouTube video, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. And yeah, here we come later this week. We're going to actually launch it towards Duna, land it, and start ferrying back and forth fuel to our Duna space station. And all of this is going to serve as a nice little outpost for missions to go deeper into the solar system. So I hope you enjoyed that. Like, comment, subscribe if you are so inclined, if you enjoyed what you saw. And if, of course, if you have any questions, leave them below. And I'll get back to you. So thanks a bunch, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.